again, BookTube. Apologies for the little hiatus that I had from making videos. The past few weeks have been very crazy, a little hectic, in a good way. Nothing bad happening to me. It's just that I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I'm in grad school and working on my master's degree, and I just started my internship at the beginning of this summer semester, and I'm taking classes this summer, and so I've just had a lot of stuff going on. Again, nothing bad, just have not had the time to be making videos, but I've still been reading. It's just I haven't been able to find the time to make videos and yell into the camera at you. But I at least wanted to make a video today, and I'm going to make another video about Jane Eyre, since we're still in the waning days of June Eyre. I think that is an event hosted by Hannah's Books, but I do want to make a video about that as well, and I don't know if that will come out today or if I'll just save that video and post it tomorrow. But aside from that, I wanted to talk to you today about a book that I just finished the other day, and I feel like I should have saved this for Rocket Summer. This is a perfect book for Michael K. Bond's BookTube event, Rocket Summer. But I wanted to at least make a video, so I'm cheating a little bit for Rocket Summer. But this is a science fiction collection of short stories by Ray Bradbury, The Illustrated Man. And this is an old mass market paperback from like the early 1970s. I think this is like the 54th printing according to the interior contents of this, and this book cover, this illustration was done by Dean Ellis. I don't know if you can tell. I don't know if my camera is picking that up very well, but this is one of the most gorgeous book covers I've ever seen. I'm not sure why I'm so drawn to it, but this is just an amazing artwork on here. And what's interesting about this little mass market paperback, who's the publisher even for this? Oh, Bantam Books. They don't credit the artist they don't credit the cover artist at all, which I thought was really odd, and they don't even have a picture of the author on the inside of the book, but on the back of it you see there's our author looking off into the distance, thinking terrible thoughts. But this particular collection, I picked this up at a used bookstore. Just randomly found it, and I looked at it and I thought, oh, well, that's an interesting cover, and I've read Ray Bradbury before, and so I'll pick it up and read it. And I did read it, and I have conflicting feelings about it. So this particular collection came out in 1951. It's a collection of short stories that Bradbury submitted to various literary magazines or newspapers that he got paid, a mere pittance for. And so it's a collection of all of these science fiction stories just meshed together. I think there's like 20 different stories in here, and they are sort of enmeshed by a prologue and an epilogue surrounding the Illustrated Man. And the whole story behind that is there's this guy, he's just known as the Illustrated Man, and our narrator in the prologue meets him, and this Illustrated Man tells him the story of how he went to get tattooed by this woman who time traveled from the future, and she tattooed all of this artwork on his body, but the problem is that she put some kind of curse on him, and so all of the tattoos, all of the artwork, it changes, and all of the tattoos predict the future, predict bad things to happen to people. And so all of this artwork and this weird shifting artwork on his body, those are the stories that are inside this collection. And so I wanted to sort of go through it, give a little bit of my thoughts for each one. Don't know if I said this yet, but this originally came out in 1951, this collection. And the the prologue and the epilogue, the whole thing about the illustrated man, to me, I don't understand why Bradbury put that in here, because it seems almost like an idea for a novel that Bradbury had, but he didn't really know what to do with it, and so he just sort of threw those two things together. There's like a half a page epilogue about the illustrated man too that makes no sense, has nothing to do with the rest of the collections, and so I just thought that was weird. And I have sort of a love-hate relationship with Bradbury's works. I read Fahrenheit 451 in high school. That was assigned to me my sophomore year of high school. And interesting history behind that, at least for me, is that we were assigned that book to read, and then that's when the COVID pandemic hit. I was a sophomore in high school, right whenever March of 2020, whenever everything shut down. And so we had to do all of our classwork online, and our English teacher still had us read it. And that was just a really interesting experience, reading in a world that's shut down, reading Ray Bradbury. And so, and I enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. I enjoyed his sort of colorful prose. And then we also, that same teacher, she assigned us, we had this sort of a science fiction unit, and she assigned us two different short stories to read, and they were actually from Ray Bradbury, from this collection. And I thought they were, at the time, I thought they were fine. Just, even at the time when I was in high school, I read this, I thought, this is for high schoolers, and this is about the demographic that it works for, that middle school to high school student age. Not for me, but good YA short stories. And so I picked this back up all these years later and read it, and I also tried reading his book Something Wicked This Way Comes. That's probably what he's most famous for, other than Fahrenheit 451. And I tried like 3 different times to read that, and I couldn't get into it. At later years, when I was reading Bradbury, I found his prose to be kind of annoying. It was one of those things where, and I had the same experience reading this, where like, take away the purple prose and what is left. The characters are not really fleshed out. I don't think the story is that interesting, or at least he doesn't make it interesting enough for me to care about it. But that's just my thing. But anyway, so here are the list of stories that are in here. So the first one is called The Veldt, and this was one of the stories that was assigned to us. It's about this sort of VR nursery that so it's set. Most of these stories are set like far in the future, either on Mars or on Earth. And this story is these parents, they installed this sort of VR nursery in their 2 kids' bedroom, and the kids can sort of imagine what they want, where they want to be. So like, if you want to be in Victorian England, okay, so you can imagine it, and then this sort of nursery, the walls are surrounded by these screens, and there are and so that you are sort of transported to Victorian England. In this story, they get transported to a veldt in Africa, sort of that African grassland, the savannah in a way. And so they're able to see all the lions, the giraffes, all these different African wild animals. And there's also a way where you can smell it. There's a sensory thing. You can smell it. You can taste all the stuff. You can like get chased by the lions if you want. And so that's what that story is about. This was one of the stories we read in high school. The ending is, it's particularly disturbing. So it was interesting reading that. I'm trying not to do spoilers for this in case you haven't read this. This is one of the most popular science fiction collections, so you've probably read it already. So there was that one. Then there was, the next one is called Kaleidoscope, and that one is where a rocket ship going through space holding all these astronauts, the rocket ship basically breaks apart, and so all of these astronauts, they're in their their outfits for being in space, and so they're sort of flung off into different directions, and but they can still communicate with each other through radio, and so all of these astronauts are sort of just talking to each other, and they get into a sort of weird existential argument about living the good life because they know they're going to die, but they get in these weird philosophical arguments about it. I didn't particularly care for this. Most of the stories in here, I'll be honest, I did not care for at all. But there was that one. Then there's another one so the one after that is called The Other Foot. And this is a sort of weird, far distant future story where Mars is populated by only black people. So about 20 years before this story took place, all of the sort of black Americans left Earth, left the sort of intense segregation and the horrible racism that was taking place on Earth at the time the story was set, and they go and live on Mars, and so it's only black people that live on Mars. But then the people in this on this planet, they get word that a rocket from Earth is coming bearing a bunch of white people, and so and the people on this planet are not happy about it, because especially like the mayor of this particular city that the story is in on Mars, and so he sort of gets together a bunch of his neighbors, and they set up this sort of unwelcoming party for the rocket, for the people on the rocket, and that they are going to do bad things to the white people on this rocket. But the whole idea, and the person in the story says, well, the shoe is on the other foot now, let's see how they like it. So there's that story, and then there's a short one called The Highway after that one. And this is like, it's a nuclear holocaust told from the perspective of a farmer, sort of a Mexican agrarian worker named Hernando, and this farm that he works on, he lives near this big highway, and so all of a sudden he sees all of these cars flying down the highway, this usual highway that never sees any traffic. And one of the people in the car, the people in the car stop, and they tell him, hey, the world is ending, like the nuclear bombs are going off, we're getting bombed, like run for your lives. And so the short story is sort of told from the perspective of Hernando, like of a person who's never seen the world, in a way. And then the next one is called The Man, and this is where a captain and a lieutenant, they take a rocket and they land on Mars, and they are expecting, especially the captain is expecting, like this big grand welcoming committee, and he is taken aback to find that is not what they run into, and the people, when they land on Mars, the Martians are really sort of indifferent to the two of them, and so the captain of this ship is furious, and the lieutenant comes to find out, the captain and the lieutenant find out that there was this interesting, mysterious man who came about 2 days before, and he was performing miracles. Things like healing the sick, providing magical food out of thin air. I think you see where this is going from. This is written in the 1950s in America. Hintity hint hint. And so the captain is furious about this because he is a very logical person. He does not believe in this holy man, and so he goes on a mission to figure out who this guy is, and why he's lying to these people. So there's that one. And then the one after that I actually liked a lot. It's called The Long Rain. And so this group of astronauts, they crash land on the planet Venus. And something that I'm sure Bradbury probably made up is that on Venus, in this particular story, it rains constantly. It never stops raining. And so it's constantly wet and cold, and the vegetation on this planet takes over. It can take over really easily. It has sort of a mind of its own. And so these astronauts, they have to find this place called a sun dome that the settlers on Venus in years before created this thing called a sun dome, where basically it's a building with a sort of electric sun or heating area in the middle, so that people who are stuck in the rain, they can go there and get dry and be warm. And so it's a lot of the story is these astronauts looking for the sun dome, and some of them are clinging to their sanity because it's constantly raining. It mentions the sort of Chinese torture method where there's a sort of typical drop, like a single drop that runs on your head, falls on your head, like about once an hour, and then you sort of go crazy anticipating that next raindrop or whatever. Had a particularly I like this a lot also because I read that story like in the middle of a pretty bad like rainstorm that we had here about a week ago, so that was interesting. And then the next story is my favorite story. It's called The Rocket Man, and I think this is the most effective story in the whole collection. And it's about an astronaut who his job takes him away from his family about 3 months at a time. He's an explorer. He goes and explores distant planets, distant galaxies, and he's gone for like 3 months at a time. And then when he comes back, he's only around for about a couple days, then he has to turn around and leave again. And so it's really about his young son, and this guy's wife dealing with that, having to deal with him being gone all the time and the sort of emotional effects of it. In case you don't know, this story is actually what inspired the Elton John song Rocket Man, and so when you read this story, you'll see a lot of like the parallels of it. Even when I was reading that story, I thought, wait a minute, is this what? Because I didn't know about that. So, but a really effective story, really moving, I thought. And then the next story is called The Fire Balloons, and this is where a story about a group of priests, like Catholic priests. They land on Mars, and they land on Mars to sort of spread the word. Again, whose word? But they find that the Martians are not quite the same as they are in terms of their physical presence, and there's something a little bit different about them. And so they're trying to spread the word of God, their God, and so they're trying to figure out what these Martians are, what they're like. So there's that one, and then the next story is called The Last Night of the World, and this one it's very short. It's only like 2 or 3 pages, but it is one of the most effective stories in this. Probably like my second favorite story, second or third favorite. It's like Rocket Man, The Long Rain, and then this is it's very short, but it's very, very punchy, very effective story about, and it's really just a conversation between this husband and wife about, the husband asks the wife, well, if this were the last night in the world, if we went to sleep and the world ended when we didn't wake up again, what do you think? What would you be doing right now? And then they eventually him and the wife find out that everyone in the neighborhood and across the world are having the same dream about this. They dreamed about it nights before, and that dream predicted that this particular night the world would be ending. And so there's sort of a story about that. Very moving and very effective for only being 2 or 3 pages. And then the next one is called The Exiles. This is the most, probably the most acid trippy of the whole collection. It's about, so it's in a far distant Earth where all of fiction and all of like the sort of horror and science fiction authors are banned, censored, and so all of the authors like Edgar Allan Poe, Dickens, Arthur Machen, Shakespeare, that's just the ones who are in this story. All of them their stories are banned, but on Mars they live in this, they live sort of spiritually And so we actually get these conversations between, like, Edgar Allan Poe is the ringleader of this whole band of people, which I find to be hilarious. And so they experience, that they exist in a sort of spiritual presence, but then once all of their last book is destroyed, then one of them dies. And so, like, there's a scene in this where the last collection of Arthur Macken's stories are destroyed, and he sort of disappears. Like, he sort of, I guess he just dies. He just disappears. And so there's this rocket ship of explorers coming to Mars, and they have this whole library of all of these authors' books, and their goal is to pretty much go to Mars and destroy them so that nobody else can see them. And so people like the ghost of Poe and the ghost of Shakespeare and all these people, all these authors, they are inducing these like weird nightmares in these astronauts, trying to prevent them from destroying their books. Really interesting story. I think it plays on the analogy of that old saying about how you die two different deaths. You have the one where you die physically, and then your second death is when no one mentions your name again. And so, interesting story, as weird as it was. And then the next story is called No Particular Night or Morning, and this is about a group of astronauts are on a long space voyage, and this particular astronaut named Hitchcock, he is slowly going insane. And this particular level of insanity is that he questions the validity or the existence of anything that he cannot directly experience. He cannot, through sensory, seeing, hearing, tasting, feeling. And he's been on this big space voyage for so long that he doesn't care when they eventually get to this distant planet. He doesn't care if they ever go back. He's just been in this sort of middle road experience for so long that he questions anything he cannot see or feel. And so he slowly goes insane, and so the story's about that. And then sort of the fatigue of being in outer space. And then the next story is called The Fox in the Forest. And this is about a couple who are from a distant future, like in the 2100s, and they both work in this like munitions factory where they develop like nuclear bombs and other weapons for war. And at this point, like, Earth is constantly in a war, these countries are constantly at war with each other. And so they go to this company where you can travel on vacation through different timelines. And so they travel to this particular timeline in the past, and they want to stay there. They don't want to go back. But when people find out that they aren't coming back, they're being chased through these timelines by a particular bounty hunter for this government. So that's that story. And then the next one is called The Visitor. And on this one, Mars is a quarantine zone for people with particularly deadly and infectious diseases. And so all of these people are sent, these people who have these diseases are sent to Mars to sort of live out their time and die so that they don't affect other people. And a young man, an 18-year-old man, he visits this planet, and he has this particular telepathic ability to take anybody sort of like by touching them. He can take that person back to the time when they were happiest in the past, and they can experience it. They can have the sensory experiences. And so he goes to this planet expecting to, help these people, and all of these people on this planet end up fighting over him. And so it's a sort of like civil war over that and how he deals with it. And then the next one is called The Concrete Mixer, which this is supposed to be a satirical invasion story. A bunch of Martians are gearing up to invade Earth, and this particular Martian that's in the, I don't know what you call it, the Martian military, the intergalactic military, he reads all of the science fiction stories that Earth people have written about Mars invasion stories. So he reads the War of the Worlds, he reads probably Ray Bradbury, and he comes like he gears up and is prepared to fight this big war whenever he gets to Earth. But then whenever they finally get down to Earth to invade, all of the people on Earth are like welcoming them. They're excited. They have a big welcoming party, sort of like that scene in Blazing Saddles when they welcome the new sheriff. And so he doesn't trust that. So he spends the whole story trying to figure out why these people love them so much, why they're not trying to kill him or the other Martians. It's supposed to be like a comedy, a satire story. I don't know. I think most of the humor was lost on me. I thought the story was really kind of dumb, but just me. And then the next one is another one that we read in high school that was assigned to us, called Marionettes Inc. And in this case, a man buys a realistic robot to replace him so that robot can spend time with his wife when this guy doesn't want to. He finds his wife particularly exhausting and clingy. And so he tells his friend about this, and he shows the friend this robot, and so the friend is like, oh, okay, I think I might get one of those. So he goes home to his wife because he's like, oh, I hate my wife too. And he goes to like say hi to her, and then she's asleep, and he notices that she's a marionette as well. She's a robot. So the wife bought a robot to replace her to spend time with the guy when they both hate each other. And the ending of this is probably the darkest. Looking back on it, like reading it in high school, or if you read this in middle school, like that can scar you. The ending. I think the whole moral of that story is don't get married, but I might be a little biased there. Don't get married because your spouse may replace you with a robot. And so the next story is called The City, and this is an Earth expedition. They land on this uncharted, unexplored planet, and they are exploring this empty city. Like, the city is intact, but there are no people, there's no animals. The place just seems abandoned. Or is it? So that's that story. Then the next story is called 0 Hour. And a bunch of kids in this neighborhood and across the country in America, they're persuaded by the same imaginary friend. They all have the same imaginary friend, and his name is Drill. And they are all persuaded by Drill to play this game called Invasion. And according to this game, the adults have to die. This imaginary game that the kids are playing. And so the mom who is sort of the mom of the main character of this story, she looks at it and she notices, like, oh, it's a nice little game that they're playing, and then she notices that all the other kids in the neighborhood are playing the same game, and they're all gearing up for this invasion. And so she calls her friend in New York, and then the friend in New York has probably the same story. Her kid is playing with all of it, and so, oh, that's a little weird. And then come to find out that invasion might not have been imaginary after all, and those kids might have been brainwashed into helping this Drill, into helping invade the Earth. So I think the moral of that story is don't have kids, because they will sell you out for a Klondike bar. And the whole point of like this imaginary friend Drill, he promises these kids, oh, if you help me, you can stay up late and you can eat whatever junk food you want. That's literally what he says. And so I think, oh, the kids would sell you out for a Klondike bar. So if you give them the kids enough rope to hang themselves with, they might facilitate an alien invasion. I've written probably like 40 different jokes about not having kids, but yeah. So there's that story, and then the last story is called The Rocket, and so this junkyard owner, he saves up $3,000, and according to Ray Bradbury and according to this story in 1951, if you save up $3,000, you can book a one-way ticket, or you can book a ticket to outer space. you can pay to go on a rocket and go into outer space. It only costs $3,000. Can you believe that? We're spending too much money on space exploration, and so, but he saves up $3,000, and he can only send one person in his family, only one of his kids or his wife, into space to explore. And so he's having this debate on, well, who do I send? He's like, I can't send my wife. Obviously, I can't send myself. That would be selfish. Well, do I send one of the children? Well, I mean, so again, I think the moral of that story is, well, if you didn't have kids, you could save up a little more money than you and your wife could go to it. But again, nobody asked me. Yeah, so that's the end. That's the end of this collection. Then there's that weird epilogue with the illustrated man that has nothing to do with the rest of the stories. I would say that this collection of stories, this collection of stories is perfect YA fiction. Like, if you handed this collection to a 13, 14-year-old boy who is sort of falling out of love with reading, sort of his schooling is making, his school assignments are making him hate reading, I would say if you handed this to him, he would get swept away by it. There's a lot in here. One thing that Bradbury, I'm sure, is very good at is scaring the crap out of teenagers reading these stories. And so, yeah, like I said in the beginning, like, high school is probably the demographic that this collection works for the best. And so it wasn't for me. I did not really care for this all that much, but there is still value to it. I see why people like this. So, again, I probably should have saved talking about this until Rocket Summer, which is in less than a week, but I felt like I had to put out at least a video because it's been like 3 weeks since I put one out. And so, and again, that artwork here on the cover is just, I want a poster of this. I may not have cared for the stories, but the artwork on this is just fantastic. So, yeah, that's the end of whatever this video was. If you can find this, pick it up and read it. If you've read it, tell me what you think about it. I'm probably being a little too critical or negative about it, but I never read science fiction. I have read Dune. It's actually on my shelf, and Dune is one of my favorite books. I absolutely loved it, but for whatever reason, like sci-fi and fantasy, I never get around to reading it. I have a bunch of it. I just never. It's not one of those genres that I think about reading, and so, but, a new foray into a new genre for me, and read this. So, yeah, hopefully you didn't find this long-winded. But I guess I'll see you next time.